Welcome to Millennium Daytime Bulletin. I'm Shpata Simar from New Delhi and you're watching Millennium News Channel 24. Today I'm bringing you the latest updates from around the world. Let's begin with today's top headlines. Zelensky to meet Trump in Washington to sign minerals deal. Israel received 4 coffins said to contain bodies of hostages. South Korea birth rate rises for the first time in 9 years amid surge in marriages. Trump says $5 million gold card immigration visas will sell like crazy. Lebanon's new government wins confidence vote in parliament. Trump nixes Venezuelan oil concessions granted by predecessor Joe Biden. Bangladesh will fall apart if police and armed forces are undermined, Army chief said. Stocks mixed as Dow falls, commodities see modest gains. Afghanistan register historic win, knock England out of Champions Trophy. Boxing one step closer to 2028 Olympics inclusion. Now let's look at the details. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky will meet the US President Donald Trump in Washington on Friday to sign an agreement on sharing his country's mineral resources, Trump has said. Zelensky has described the bilateral deal as preliminary and said he wants the further agreements, which include the United States' security guarantees to deter renewed Russian aggression. But Trump said the United States would not provide guarantees beyond very much, saying the responsibility should instead fall to the Europe. Also, Trump has seemingly ruled out the prospect of Ukraine becoming a NATO member, one of Zelensky's long-held ambition. Speaking at the summit of his cabinet on Wednesday, Trump said the presence of American workers extracting rare earth mineral and metals on the Ukrainian soil would provide automatic security for Ukraine. He said Kyiv should forget about joining NATO and repeated Russia's claim that the issue was one of the driving factors behind the war. The US President Donald Trump suggested a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia was not far off, telling reporters, "We are going to make a deal with Russia and Ukraine to stop killing people." But Zelensky said without security guarantees, we won't have a ceasefire, nothing will work, nothing. I want to find a NATO path or something similar. Russia has consistently opposed the idea of Ukraine becoming a member, fearing it would bring NATO forces too close to its border. In 2008, the alliance has said that Ukraine could eventually join. Trump has suggested European peacekeeping troops could be stationed at the Ukraine as part of the ceasefire deal. But Russia says it against this. Also, Zelensky said the success of the mineral deals, which was formally backed by his government on Wednesday evening, would depend on the outcome of his meeting with Trump this week. Key details have not been made public, but Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal has said that it envisages on the investment fund for the Ukraine's reconstruction. The prospect of a deal was first proposed by Zelensky last year as a way to offer the United States a tangible reason to continue supporting Ukraine. But disagreements over its substance exacerbated the tensions between Trump and Zelensky in recent weeks. The Ukrainian president had rejected the initial request from the United States for $500 billion in mineral wealth, but media reports suggested this demand has now been dropped. 4 coffins said to contain the remains of Israeli hostages have been received by Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu office said. The Red Cross handed the coffin over to the Israel Defense Force, that is IDF, to the Kerem Shalom crossing through Egyptian mediators, and the process of identifying the bodies have now begun on the Israeli territory, the office said in a statement in the early hours on Thursday morning local time. The families of the hostages are being continuously updated on the situation and will be given an official notification at the end of the full identification process, the Prime Minister's office said, asking the public to respect the privacy of the hostages' families. Israel is now expected to release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners in the coming hours. In exchange, anxious family members and loved ones gathered outside a hospital in Khan Yunis, where some of the released Palestinian prisoners are expected to be taken. Meanwhile, in Israel, communities from Kibbutz Nahal Oz and Shar Hanegev also gathered and waited. Footage taken in the early hours on Thursday local time showed a group of Palestinian prisoners disembarking from a Red Cross vehicle in the Ramallah in the occupied West Bank to the cheers of a jubilant crowd, but it is unclear how many have been released by the authorities. This is the final release of the hostages and Palestinian prisoners under phase 1 of the ceasefire deal Hamas and Israel agreed last month. Officially, that the truce ends on the Saturday, it is unclear whether talks on extending the ceasefire have begun. Earlier, Israel said it would send a team of experts from the National Center for Forensic Medicine to the Kerem Shalom border crossing to assist in identifying the deceased hostages. A previous release caused uproar when one of the bodies handed over by the Hamas, that was supposed to be that of the hostage Shiris Bibas, was found instead to be that of an unidentified Gazan woman. Also, Hamas later blamed a mix-up and returned Bibas' body. If the 4 bodies are identified as belonging to the hostages, the release would mean that Hamas and its allies now hold 59 captives according to Israeli figures. Of those, more than half are thought to be dead by the Israeli government. One, Hadar Golden, has been held dead since before October 7, 2023. Hamas military wing, the Qasem Brigade, said earlier on Wednesday that the remains of Shachi Idan and Itzhak Alegrat and Ohad Yahalomi and Shlomo Mansour would be handed over. The Israeli military has previously said that Mansour, who is 85, was the oldest hostage taken on October 7, 2023, was killed during the Hamas-led attack and his body was held in Gaza. It had not confirmed the death of the others. The latest transfer was held in private affair, and after the Israeli Prime Minister office said that the agreement had been reached for the 4 to be returned in an agreed upon procedure and without Hamas ceremony. The handover has been in doubt since Saturday, when Israel failed to release more than 600 Palestinian prisoners and detainees in protest at what is said was humiliating ceremonies conducted by Hamas during previous. South Korea's birth rate rose last year for the first time in 9 years as the surge in marriages raised hope that the country may be lifting itself out of the demographic crisis. Preliminary data released by the government body Statistics Korea on Wednesday showed that the number of babies born per 1,000 people in 2024 stood at 4.7, the first rise since 2014. South Korea's fertility rate, or the average number of babies a woman is expected to have in her lifetime, was 0.75, the data said, up 0.03 from 0.72 in 2023. The number of births last year was 238,300, an increase of 8,300 or 3.6%. While the country wrestles with a prolonged political crisis, government attempts to persuade more young people to marry and have children appear to have had a positive, if limited, effect. Also, South Korea has one of the world's longest life expectancies and its lowest birth rate, a combination experts have warned will lead to population instability and pose a threat to its status as a regional economic power. The rise in birth rate has come from a very low base and remains far below the 2.1 births per woman needed to stabilize the population without large-scale immigration. Since 2018, South Korea has been the only OECD country with a rate below 1.0, a level the government says it hopes to achieve by 2030. But it has struggled to tackle factors experts believe that are behind the reluctance to have larger families, including the high cost of living and education, a tough job market, and growing opposition among women to traditional gender roles. The conservative administration of the impeached President Yoon Suk Yeol has spent billions of dollars on a measure to arrest the decline, including the financial incentives for the newlyweds and expanded measures to arrest the decline, including financial incentives for the newlyweds and expected the child care assistance. Also, Yoon, whose fate is now in the hands of the Constitutional Court following his short-lived declaration of martial law in December, has described the low birth rate as a national crisis and said he planned to create a new ministry to address it. Park Hyun-jung, an official from the Statistics Korea, said the rise in the number of marriages seen since the lifting of COVID-19 restriction has continued. The number of marriages considered a reliable indicator of expected birth in the country where few children are born out of wedlock jumped 14.9% last year, the biggest rise since data was first released in 1970. There was no change in the social values, with more positive view about marriages and childbirth, Park told a briefing, adding that a rise in the number of people in the early 30s had also been a factor. It's difficult to measure how much each factor contributed to the rise in the new birth, but they themselves had an impact to each other too, she said. South Korea's overall population is in decline, however, with death outstripping that the birth by 120,000 last year, the fifth consecutive year of the natural sinkage. President Donald Trump has unveiled plan for selling a gold card visa for $5 million that will offer wealthy buyers permanent residency in the United States and a path to citizenship. At the first cabinet meeting of his current team, Trump told reporters that the visa would function similarly to the green cards, which allow immigrants of varying income to live and work in the permanent United States. That would also go to the high-level people only. The people who can pay $5 million, they are going to create jobs, Trump said. It's going to sell like crazy. It's a bargain. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick also said in the meeting. Also, the Golden Visa would replace the current visa program for the foreign investors, but offered few details. Dozens of countries around the world offer some sort of citizenship by investment program, including several Europe-like countries in the Portugal and Spain that gives the golden visas or permanent residency for foreigners who invest euro 500,000 into a qualifying fund. Trump said companies would use the Golden Visa program to hire non-citizens to work for them in the United States. We have to be able to get people in the country, and we want people that are productive people, Trump said. Typically, green card holders in the United States can apply for citizenship after 5 years. Trump suggested revenue from the high-priced visa could also be used to pay off U.S. debt. Lutnick said that the initiative will replace the EB-5 visa, which gives permanent residency to some foreigners who invest around $1 million and create at least 10 full-time jobs in the United States, saying the EB-5 program was poorly overseen and poorly executed. That is, the Lutnick said the Golden Visa would be an improvement. We are going to make sure they are wonderful, world-class global citizens, Lutnick said of the future gold card applicants. It was not immediately clear how the government would select recipients, if there were any exclusions, or if there would be any cap on how many are issued. During the fiscal year of 2024, the State Department issued 12,000 EB-5 visas, a record high for the program. Nawaf Salam's government win the the backing of 95 lawmakers in the 128-seat parliament, Lebanon's new government has won a confidence vote in the parliament following a speech by the president and the prime minister Nawaf Salam promising to push for the economic reforms and to start negotiation with the International Monetary Fund. Salam's government won the backing of the 95 lawmakers in the 128-seat chamber late on Wednesday. Lebanon's political landscape has been overturned since Hezbollah, long a dominant player in the Lebanese politics, was badly pummeled in the last year's war with Israel. The new government policy statement as such did not include language used in previous years that was seen as legitimizing a role for Hezbollah in defending Lebanon. We want a state that holds the exclusive authority over decisions on war and peace, a state loyal to the Constitution and national accord, ensuring the implementation of unfulfilled provisions, Salam said before the parliament. On Tuesday, Hezbollah has given its backing to the government in a speech delivered by the senior Hezbollah lawmaker Mohammad Rad. We will work on removing Lebanon from the grey list and start negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, that is IMF, Salam said before the vote. We will put the depositors at the top of our priority. Lebanon's new administration is made up of political outsiders and presented its agenda to a parliament still dominated by parties blamed for nearly bankrupting the country, said Al Jazeera, Qadr reporting from Beirut, Lebanon. Also, it's a different time and follows Hezbollah 14-month conflict with Israel and fall of Bashar al-Assad in the neighboring Syria, which closed the supply routes from Iran, said Qadr. The new government didn't give Hezbollah status as the only legitimate armed entity other than the military. A post-Hezbollah era is being established. Also, beyond issues of security, the new government is going to have a deal with the extensive reconstruction as well as battered economy and a financial sector, among with the other challenges that the country is facing. Lebanon has been in the economic crisis since 2019, with its financial system collapsed under the weight of massive state debts, prompting a sovereign default in 2020 and freezing ordinary depositors out of their saving in the banking system. United States President Donald Trump has cancelled oil production concession granted to Venezuela under his predecessor, Democrat Joe Biden. In the social media post on Wednesday, Trump said that the government of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has also made no improvement in areas such as election reform and immigration enforcement. We are hereby reversing the concession that crooked Joe Biden gave to Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela on the oil transaction agreement dated November 26, 2022, and also having to do with the electoral condition within Venezuela which have not been made yet by the Maduro regime, the post read. In 2022, the Biden administration issued the U.S. energy giant Chevron a license to expand production in oil-rich Venezuela. At the time, the United States was taking cautious steps to lower tension with the Maduro government, also partly in the hopes of spurring greater collaboration on energy. Then in October 2023, officials in Maduro's administration signed a pair of deal called the Barbados Agreement, which affirmed its commitment to a free and fair election carried out under the observation of international election experts. But in the lead up to Venezuela's 2024 presidential election, the Maduro government stepped up repressive action targeting the country's political opposition. For example, it barred political rivals from running, including Maria Corina Machado and Corina Yoris, a professor who tried to replace Machado in the race. Still, opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez appeared to track to best Maduro at the ballot box, according to the pre-election poll. But shortly after the vote on 28 July, the country's election authority announced Maduro had won without providing the usual breakdown of voting tallies. The break in tradition fueled widespread allegations allegation that Maduro has falsely claimed victory. Still on January 10, Maduro was sworn into office for a third time. Trump himself has inaugurated for a second term in the White House several days later on January 20. But political observers questioned whether Trump's new mandate in the office would spell a different approach to Venezuela. During his first regime, from 2017 and 2021, Trump subjected that Venezuela to the devastating sanctions and a campaign of maximum pressure. He even placed $15 million reward for information that would lead to Maduro's arrest. In an unprecedented public statement, the Army Chief of Bangladesh, General Waqaruzzaman, on Tuesday warned that the interim government should not undermine the law and order machinery. Addressing a gathering on mostly military officials where he spoke on the National Martyrdom Day, General Zaman said Bangladesh will fall apart if the authority of the armed forces, police and other law enforcement agencies are undermined. This nation's independence and sovereignty will be undermined if you cannot stop the mudslinging and if you continue to kill and injure each other. I have no other aspiration. For the past 7 to 8 months I have had enough, said General Zaman in the first public statement after the continued volatility in Bangladesh. General Zaman was in charge of the government for few days after Sheikh Hasina fled, leaving the affairs of the state. He, however, made way for the interim government led by the Nobel Peace Prize Dr. winner, that was Muhammad Yunus. Also, since the arrival of Dr. Yunus, the interim government, much of the focus has been on the 6 commissions that were given to mandate to fix the accountability for violence carried out by the police and paramilitary forces on order from the Awami League government of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. These commissions, backed by the advisor in the government, have often targeted the police and other law and order machineries in the country, attacking the legitimacy from which these agencies earlier used to derive their power. Countering the trend of law enforcement agencies responsibly, collectively, the doctor also said that the police, RAB, DGFI, BGB, NSI have done extremely important work for the country. Alongside negative things, they have done numerous good deeds. This is why we found a stable atmosphere in the country in the past. Now bringing you latest update on today's market trends. Stock market summary in the provided image showcased that the performance of the key indices across various countries in the United States. The Dow Jones Industrial Average experienced a significant decline of 188.04 points or 0.43 points, closing at 43,433.12. Conversely, the S&P 500 showed slight growth, increasing by 0.81 points or 0.01%, reaching 5,000. The Nasdaq Composite saw a stronger rise, climbing 48.88 points or 0.26 to 19,000. The Volatility Index, often referred to the fear gauge, declined by 1.70% to 0.33 points to 19. The Russell 2000, which tracks small cap stocks, rose by 4 points or 0.19 to 2,000. In Canada, the S&P TSX Composite Index posted the robust gain of 124 points or 0.49, reaching 25,000, while the S&P TSX 60 also climbed 6 points to reach at 1,500. Meanwhile, Brazil's Bovespa Index recorded the most notable decline in the data set, dropping sharply by 1,200 points or 0.96 to settle 124. Also, in contrast, Childs S&P IPSA showed a positive trend, increasingly by 35 points or 0.48, reaching 7,351. Mexico's S&P BMV IPC also experienced significant gains, adding 246 points or 0.46 points to reach 53,296. Overall, while some indices such as the Dow and Bovespa faced decline, others, particularly in Canada, Mexico and the Nasdaq, posted gains, indicating a mixed market sentiment. The commodity market summary highlights the performance of key assets across energy, metals, and agriculture. In the energy sector, WTI crude oil experienced a modest gain of 0.16 points or 0.32 point, reaching to the price of 68.78. Similarly, Brent crude oil saw a 0.19 point increase or 0.26%, pushing its price to 72.22. Also, the natural gas will be inching higher by 0.01 points, reflecting 0.15% rise, bringing its price to 3.96. These gains suggest slight upward movement in the energy market. In the metal sector, gold showed a minor decline of 0.50 points or 0.02%, settling at 2,930. Also, while the silver dipped slightly by 0.05 points or 0.16%, closing at 32.22. These small losses indicate relative stability in precious metal. Agricultural commodity represented by soya beans experienced a slight increase of 0.02 points or 0.17%, bringing the price to 10.43. We'll be right back after a short break. I'm Shweta Zimar from New Delhi. Keep watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome back after the break. I'm Shweta Zimar from New Delhi and you are watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin. Now let's look at some sports highlights. Ibrahim Zadran's majestic 177 and Pacer Azmatullah trumped the Joe Root's masterful 100 as the brave Afghanistan registered a thrilling 8-run win to knock a largely insipid England out of the Champions Trophy on Wednesday. England are winless after 2 matches, and in their last league match in the Group B, they will face South Africa, who already have 3 points along with Australia. Also, Afghanistan now has 2 points and will have to beat the Aussies in the final group match to entertain the hopes of reaching the last 8. For a long time, England chase merely rattled along as the dismissal of Phil Salt and Jamie Smith jolted them early. They were 30 for 2 then and eventually ended up at 217 all out with a basketball, and to spare a pacer, Omarzai struck at the crucial junctures. They were not really blazing partnerships but kept England afloat, keeping them in the vicinity of asking rate, but the jetsoning of the Duckett and the Butler prematurely curtailed those promising the joint venture, as Root had to shoulder the burden all by himself. World Boxing has been granted the provisional recognition as the Sports International Governing Federation by the International Olympic Committee. Boxing is currently not part of the program for the Los Angeles 2028 and the creation of a new global body of the biggest hurdle to the sport's inclusion in the next games. The IOC has been running the boxing at the past the 2 Olympics after the International Boxing Association, that is IBA, was suspended as the sports world governing body in 2019 over governance, finance, refereeing and the ethical issues. Also, the Russian-led IBA was then stripped to its status in the June 2023 over a failure to implement reforms. World Boxing was formed in April 2023 and now has 78 members across 5 continents, including Great Britain. The IOC said the IOC assessment concluded that World Boxing has continued to make progress regarding the identified areas of consideration. That's all for now. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for more updates. Log in to stay updated with the latest news news on our social media platforms Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at the Millennium News 24. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel Millennium News 24. You can watch us on Android and iOS devices as well as on Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and all smart TV platforms. Enjoy entertainment and latest news with us. Download the Millennium TV app, Millennium TV USA for Android, and Millennium News on Google. Thank you for being part of Millennium News Channel 24.